Jared Dixon Designs Truck Series. Sorry for us getting in here just a little bit late. We had some issues, not only with the recording program, but also had the recording program have to run an update. But nonetheless, Seth Cole here in the booth, and being joined, a name that you would actually recognize being on track in a lot of the elite racing leagues that we've done, but he's actually graciously accepted to come here in the commentator's booth and help me with this series, and that is Tyler Riggs. Tyler, thanks for being here.
Hey, man, honored to be here. I always thought Flatout did a great job with the broadcast, so it's just an honor to now be part of that, be able to kind of get in with you guys and provide my knowledge of the Elite Series for you guys.
100 laps here at Daytona. We've gotten underway, and they're already going side by side here, and I think we're going to maybe see quite a bit of this, especially in the early portions.
Yeah, but it's going to be calm side by side. It's going to be a lot of guys trying to hook up with their teammates, trying to kind of feel everybody out. Watched a lot of practices, a lot of group drafting, and guys just trying to get used to each other, because with this truck series, it's a lot of guys new to Elite. There is a lot of familiar faces in the field, but for the most part, it's guys just, racing each other for the first time.
And with these new faces, we got Chris James up here at the front, Sean Leisure there in second, Tyler Dixon in third. What these guys are doing here in what's going to only be a 4-race season, they're basically kind of auditioning for whether they're going to be running full-time in the Xfinity Series or in the Cup Series.
Right, you mentioned how that works. Basically, Elite, above all, values clean racers, with good attitudes. It's not so much about the speed aspect. So, in talking with Chad Frankenfield kind of earlier in the day, anybody that gets approved in this series, regardless of where they finished in the points, this or that, will be welcome to come join the Xfinity Series. And the top 6 drivers in points that are not already registered drivers, so you see guys like Kendall Noah Player in the field, obviously he wouldn't qualify in this, but those guys will get a ticket into the Cup Series if they're willing to do so.
It also kind of gives us an idea, too, if some of these guys make it into Xfinity or into Cup or whatever, it gives kind of an idea of who to watch, because if you look at the schedule we're here today at the Super Speedway Daytona. Next week we go to 1.5 miles at Texas, and then we got a double header the following week at the 2-mile Speedway of Auto Club and then the short track of Bristol. So barring a road course, kind of get a little bit of a taste of each type of the track out there.
Yeah, and that schedule is designed that way, as you mentioned, to kind of test everybody's abilities across multiple track types and just see how everybody reacts to the type of racing that you're going to have to be capable of on those tracks to do it cleanly, above all.
So, we've got some of these guys in here that you mentioned, like Kendall Noah Player, M. Daniel Martinez. We've seen a lot of these guys, Scott Haney, Michael Goodman, Brady Clark, Justin Dewar. Yeah, there's a lot of names we recognize. So obviously, they're familiar with each other's racing styles, so you would think maybe they'd work together, but there's also probably some guys that are new here that are coming over, and they're friends with some of these other guys that have come over. So do you think this is one of those cases of your friends are where you find them, or do you think some alliances were made prior to the green?
I think it's a mix of both, because you do have some new teams, as you're mentioning. You got Wolfpack Esports. They have 4 entries in the series. They're new to Elite, so they're looking to kind of break in. TNT Racing, they have 2 entries of 2 guys that have been part of Elite, but now are doing it kind of under a different banner. And so you're going to have that, and then, as you mentioned, you'll probably have some alliances together of guys that know each other from roundabout ways and say, hey, let's go ahead and work together in this type of event. It's a huge field. We got 30-plus cars here, so you're going to have to find some friends, no doubt about it.
Absolutely. It actually looks like out of those 30 cars you're talking about, I think there were 38 that showed up for the race. Right now, they're only showing 28 of them on track, though, so I'm not really sure where those other 10 drivers are, if they're going to be coming back out on the track later on here, but still a pretty big field with 28 trucks out there.
Yeah, and I'm actually seeing all the way down to 35th right now. So there's Matthew Weeks, Chad Frankenfield, and Levi Zielinski are all guys that are going to be officials, I think, basically like off track. So you got Chuck Sweetings back there, 35th. He's by himself way back here at that 23, and he's really off pace. Other than that, you got some guys that are just kind of trailing in the back here, which is common at Talladega. Tail end of that pack is at the 4 of Chris W. Jordan, another elite competitor that we mentioned that has kind of come over into this series.
Yeah, I actually just clicked back there on some of those guys towards the rear of the field. Apparently there's, I guess, I don't know if it's on the end of this or if it's on their end. It looks like there's some connection issues, and that's why they're not really showing up.
Yep.
A lot of like smoke where a car disappears and reappears. I keep thinking it's the big one. Oh wait, no, false alarm.
Yeah, that's the good old internet right there taking hold, and just technology is what we got to work with. So
right now, Chris Jones has led every lap so far after starting on the pole. Looks like he's got a wingman that's pretty content to ride behind him, and Sean Leger, but trying to get that outside line going there is the 84, and I know that there's a couple of names that I'm going to mess up, but this one I guess I actually, it kind of was easy to pronounce once you told me it, Frickenek. So, yeah, he was one of the three I looked at, I'm like, oh, how do you pronounce this? And then it's like, oh, it's actually somewhat simple.
Yeah, that's always the dreadful part sometimes of being a broadcaster. You see a name and you're like, oh my goodness, how does this even come out of my mouth? And but no, Marcus, he's a guy I've actually raced with quite a lot in public lobby, actually. He does a lot of Class E in these trucks and the fixed lobbies just on the Oval Series. And so it's no surprise to me to see him kind of out in front here trying to take control. And it probably has a couple guys lined up. I see one of those Wolfpack Esports cars behind him. Not sure which number. That is the 29. That's Curtis Kenyon. That's another guy I know that he used to broadcast Rocket League for a league called Minor League Esports. Now he's come over to iRacing. So very diverse field in terms of guys that have been on the sim or not have been on the sim up until this point.
Really ironic because literally the game I was playing before I came out here to commentate was Rocket League. But anyway, now looks like it's side by side now for the lead as Frickenek's going to actually get that outside line lined up. They've been able to make some progress, and we may end up having a new race leader if they can get just a little bit more momentum.
Yeah, and in these trucks especially, it's all about getting to the number of cars behind you, or trucks in this case, and just getting a big line because they're so the horsepower is so low. It's all about just lining up properly, making sure you're getting that good momentum. And really, that top side, when you get at least 4 or 5 new guys up there, it's going to start pushing really well.
Now, I know that you've been in these trucks before. You've got experience, and so one thing I'm noticing is I would have thought that the trucks would have a little bit more downforce and be a little bit easier to drive, but it even looks like these trucks are having a little bit of issue with like that dancing that we see through the corners, not being able to really keep it in a straight line.
Yeah, and part of that is it's a big field, so a lot of guys, especially in this field, are not used to racing so tight next to one another, even at super speedways, because there's a lot of guys that may have come from just public lobby racing, or as I mentioned, maybe they're new to the sim. Not only that, I think the new tire model has kind of played a little bit of a factor in that. Not that it's a huge difference, but especially when you're in a corner at a high speed like we're talking about here at these super speedways, it starts dancing on you a bit more than you expect or you're used to.
I think that dancing actually kind of broke up that outside line because Frickenek and Kenyon, they lost a lot of ground on that top side. Looks like they're trying to get it back, but they got to keep themselves lined up nose to tail if they're going to make any forward progress.
Yeah, not only that, then you got to hope that, another couple guys kind of latch onto the end of it. It looks like a few of those guys got to run up there and decided, hey, I'm just going to kind of back off and fall back in place a little bit. So a bit of a filling out there on the top side.
One of the great things, too, about having you in the booth is it's able to kind of compare because most of my online racing career is through Enter 2003. And so to compare with iRacing, I know that in NR, I actually just recently ran a Daytona race, and the inside line seems to bunch up a lot. You have to really play with the throttle to avoid running somebody over in the corner because you're all so bunched up on the shorter way around the track. Is it the same in iRacing?
Oh, it absolutely is. And so, like myself, if you watch me kind of over the the super speedway days, I love running that top side until it becomes necessary to kind of make the move to the bottom if things get a little squirrely. But the top side, man, you get it hooked up and you start rolling. It feels a lot more free in the sense that you could carry more momentum because you're, when you're down there on the bottom and you're pinned down 3rd, 4th, 5th in line, 2x2x2, there's really not much places you could go. You got to, as you mentioned, really watch that throttle to not bump the guy in front of you wrong, or there's going to be a massive checkup, and that's not going to be good.
For a moment there, Sean Leger actually got right to the bumper of Chris James, and one thing we were told when we had that Cadillac race on Monday was you really couldn't line the bumpers up. But with the trucks, it's kind of a flatter back end to flatter front end, might be easier to line up the bumpers. So I don't think they do it now, but if we get closer to the end of the race, do you think we'll start seeing drivers kind of try to do a tandem and be literally nose to tail?
Yeah, so the art with the trucks, because as you mentioned, the bumper itself is actually pretty flat, so it's a good surface area. The tougher part is making sure your front bumper does not, get your right bumper, left bumper, some of that nature, because that's what throws it off more than, like you get in your Xfinity cars or your Cup cars. That's kind of the more challenging part of that. And obviously, if you got a big run, you can't just go full throttle into it. You got to be able to know your momentum into that. Other than that, though, yeah, probably the easiest of the three main cars to pull off that big bump gap.
I know that obviously at any super speedway, the big one always looms around every corner, but we've managed to make it 14 going on to 15 laps under green flag conditions, so we have to speculate anyway the possibility of green flag pit stops. So, the way that they're running right now, all nose to tail, how do you think these guys are able to communicate with each other? I mean, some of these guys may not know each other at all. How do you communicate to make sure you're going to come to pit road with a big pack?
Yeah, I mean, you have to get on that voice chat for the all teams and all that and say, hey, pit this time, that type of deal, because if not, as you mentioned, it's going to be chaos, especially in a pack like this. One thing I'm noticing, though, we talked about having kind of the elite, some of these elite guys in here. Most of those guys are in the back right now, and off the main pack, they're about 3 seconds or so. You got Joshua Personette back there, Kendall Noah player, Logan Shea, Chris Jordan. They're all just kind of waiting in the back side of it. I think they're planning for, a potential long green flag run here to play that strategy down the stretch.
You got Kosla, Goodman, Duer back there as well, Dallas Myhan, Dimantova. So yeah, a lot of these guys look like they're kind of on the strategy of be in a good spot to avoid the big one when and if it happens, but at least stay in the draft.
Yeah, and if you don't lose the draft, then you wind up being Chuck Sweeting, or if you do lose the draft, Chuck Sweeting, he's already gone a lap down back there. We mentioned earlier he was really kind of off the pack, and now he's a lap down. He's settled into the draft finally, but if you don't get a caution, that's going to be huge. You're going to be sitting there trying to figure out a way to maybe short pit or do something and just get lucky to, get caught back up with the pack.
Absolutely. We had our first instance in a long time of 3 wide. It was hard to tell who that was. It looked like it might have been the 38, maybe the 60, dropping back there, but back in line. But up front, well, for a brief moment, it looked like Fricknick was actually going to make a move, was actually going to get that outside line going, but again, they broke up. It just seems like as soon as the 84 gets up alongside the 06, the line dies out.
Yeah, and that's just, guys on that top line sometimes get a little impatient because it is a little scary up there if you're not used to it. You start getting closer and closer to the wall and you're like, oh, I don't know about this. And so that results in just naturally a lot of people not really wanting to test that top line, especially this early in the race. I mean, you got a lot of laps to go through and just make sure you take care of your equipment.
Yeah, we just had another truck get past and put down a lap. I couldn't tell who that was.
Looked like it was Matthew Weeks who started in the pits for the race, so he's actually showing 8 laps down right now. I don't know if he's just out here to kind of just chill and run around. Talking with him earlier on Twitter, he's running under Pro Edge because that's his team, but he's kind of been sent to do this as a recruiter, quote unquote. So obviously they might be looking to add some talent from some of these new guys that are going to be coming up. So interesting strategy by him. Obviously just maybe trying to ride around and see how the race goes.
That's a really good point you brought up, and I didn't really think about that because, yeah, not only are these guys auditioning to see which series they're going to go into, whether it be Xfinity or Cup, but they're also kind of auditioning for any teams that might have open spots and might try and sign them as a talent.
Yeah, and that's just, part of kind of the elite culture. Teams are always looking to kind of see how they can get better, maybe expand a little bit. It's kind of a cool environment in that sense to be able to do that. We get teams of individual guys up to teams of 4 and 5, so very diverse in that sense.
Jones has enjoyed the view out in front. The only thing I would kind of wonder with him is he's the one that's cutting the draft for everybody else. So he's the one that's using up the most fuel. I'm kind of surprised he hasn't thought about maybe trying to find a way to swap spots with the 67 of Leisure and maybe have him go out in front and lead a while.
Right. Well, and that may come down to, as we talked about with the Alliance, saying obviously Leisure's been comfortable riding behind Chris James. We don't know the relationship there, if they actually are cool with each other. They have communication. And I'm not sure, unfortunately, I didn't get to scout out kind of the fuel run, what you got lap-wise to go with. But usually in these trucks, I mean, you might wind up with, 20 laps or so, somewhere in there, depending, obviously, on the draft, as you're mentioning. So we'll see how Chris handles that.
Car stuck there in what's dubbed the sucker hole, going to the back there in the middle. That is a lonely feeling at a super speedway.
Yeah, and sometimes though you're trying to get back there because you don't like the racing up where you're at, and you're just like, hey, I want to sink back, I want to relax a little bit, get myself out of what they may consider the danger zone.
Was Jacob Adams there?
Yep,
that was caught in the middle, and he's finally found his way back in line there on the top side. And speaking of top side, it's coming back again. Brickenick is not giving up, and he, along with Curtis Kenyon, they are still trying. Question is, will they stay nose to tail this time, or will the momentum die out again?
I'm really interested that Curtis Kenyon has kind of stayed up here like he has. He's a guy that has been very new to the sim, just got into it, I think, here over the last few months, and so he's still kind of fresh. So I don't know how comfortable he really is to be able to get up on there and try to push Marcus and try to get some good momentum off that.
Really, too, if you think about it, he's done a pretty good job staying committed to the back bumper of Brickenick, but it all counts on that third, fourth, fifth truck back there in that outside line as well, if that line's going to make any forward progress or not.
Yeah, and now it looks like they're breaking up a little bit again back there, so that's kind of, as you're seeing it, it's killed the run a little bit of Marcus Brickenick, that 84, and now he's sitting back third, fourth car outside the top line all of a sudden.
Yeah, that looks like they're going to drop back maybe side by side for third. Well, maybe they're coming back up there for second. The thing that really impresses me, though, is the fact that as they have lost that momentum, they then managed to regenerate it, get it back, and charge back up towards the front. So you got to think, with the amount of times they've attempted it, sooner or later their efforts have to pay off.
Right, and I think the reason the inside lane's kind of fallen off at times, because looking at Tyler Dixon, that 79, he's teammates with Curtis Kenyon, who's outside of him in that top lane, so maybe they're trying to race each other pretty steady, make sure they've got enough room. That results in Tyler not really pushing super hard all the time on Sean Leisure in his back bumper.
That whole inside line there through 1 and 2 was really broken up. There was about a truck length gap between Dixon back to Vic Bloom, and then about another truck length back to M. Daniel Martinez. So they were not really all lined up nose to tail on that inside line. And I think that's what's allowing this outside line to charge back up. Yeah,
it is, no doubt. Vic Bloom, that's an interesting guy. It's usually our off-track official for most of our Elite Series, so he's kind of getting in there and getting in with the drivers for once and taking a few laps at a time. He's kind of cruising right now, and I think he's one of those guys that's going to be smart about just making sure you don't do anything crazy in these early laps.
I think really, like up here, maybe the top 6 or 7 might be the ones that are really racing it up. Everybody else, though, I think they've kind of found where they're comfortable. They're just riding for the moment, maybe looking to see what's going to shape up after the round of green flag pit stops or until we have a wreck, one or the other. So I think for the moment, everybody's just kind of minding their P's and Q's and just trying to keep their trucks in one piece before we get to the second half of this race.
Oh, no doubt about it. And just having as many, elite drivers in here as we do, that plays a part in it because it takes away probably, 10 to 15 potential really racy guys that, are new to the series. And that's always kind of an interesting mix. Not only that, you mentioned the fuel run. That's where at a track like this, it's all about the mind games of pit strategy. You're going to see probably, there could be 8 different strategies going on by the time we get to that first round of pit stops.
We've got about roughly around 27 odd cars up there in that lead pack right now. Amazingly, we haven't had more stragglers losing the draft. So yeah, we could have anywhere from maybe 10 to 12 cars in one swoop coming to pit road altogether. And while Daytona isn't a difficult pit road to get onto, in terms of traffic control and maneuvering around other guys that are pitting with you, that's what makes it a little bit of a hairy situation.
Oh, man, you don't know how nerve-wracking it is trying to come to pit road on super speedway whenever, you know, your team may say, all right, boys, hey, we're pitting on this lap. Let's make sure we fan out, give everybody room to slow down. All it takes is one of those guys slipping up, hitting the brakes a little too hard. They get loose, and you start hitting other people. So if there's going to be kind of an early caution in this race after during green flag run, that's maybe where it's going to come from, is people just trying to get on the pit road cleanly.
Look at that camera view coming down the back straightaway, and, you know, they were double wide coming out of 2, and they remained double wide by the time they got to turn 3, but they were kind of dancing around, searching in the middle line, searching on the top line. Why are they doing that?
Well, you know, I think it's guys getting a little bit more comfortable with each other, and you know, just starting to explore a little bit, saying, hey, can I make a run here and there? Also, you get a lot of guys that just kind of want to see, you know, make sure they're keeping control of their temperatures on the engine. Because if you're constantly hooked up on a rear bumper, even in these trucks, you really got to watch that water pressure. Make sure you're not going to sit there and blow up. So sometimes you just got to peek out a little bit and catch some air. And, you know, for me, it was always as simple as just doing what Tyler Dixon at 79 is doing. See, he's not hooked up to Sean Leisure. He's comfortably about, you know, half a car length or so off of him, and that keeps your temps down pretty well too. So each guy kind of handles it a different way.
I'm noticing the gap that he's giving there too. I'm almost wondering, could he maybe be clutching a little bit, trying to have a car behind him, clutch a little into the corner, get the draft from the truck behind him again, save a little fuel that way?
Oh, no doubt. You know, that could easily come down to kind of their strategy call as a team with that Wolfpack Esports, as you mentioned right there, Chris Kenyon, that 29 teammate of his. They've got the 8 of Brian Delp as well, and then the 81 of, I believe, Derek Self, that's who it is. And those two are a little bit further back in the pack, so they might have to kind of, you know, do a little bit different things when it comes to the strategy part of it.
I almost wondered if maybe Tyler Dixon might have been trying to open up a lane down low for his teammate to be able to come down there, Curtis Kenyon. But at the moment, it was looking like Kenyon had thoughts about pushing Frickenick to the lead. Now again, that outside line has lost its momentum, and maybe, well, I thought maybe the 29 might try and tuck down behind the 79, but Vic Bloom is there.
Yeah, you know, here's the tough part too. They're coming up on a lap down car, or a car that's about to be a lap down. So if you're the top lane in those situations, most of the time at these super speedways, that car is going to, oh, it's weak, and he pulled down to the bottom. So you don't have to worry about it. But sometimes those guys that wind up getting a lap down, they get trapped on the outside. So that kind of squeezes things a little bit. You got to be careful on that.
Had guys up there on the top side all been pretty committed up there. You know, obviously, Frickenick's tried to make that outside line go. He's had Curtis Kenyon with him. You got Kevin Fione up there as well. Kevin LaPointe in the 39. At what point do you think these guys are thinking, this isn't working, I got to find a place down low?
Well, I think I just saw it a little bit with Joseph Costello in that 60 back there at about, it's about 12th. He just dipped down from that top lane and swung down to the bottom. Maybe he's thinking, hey, I'm going to try to work past some of these slower top lane guys. And then at that point, some guys re-entering up top, gaining a couple positions that way.
That might also have been why that top side lost some momentum, because there were about maybe 7-8 cars lined up there. Now there's only 6. And really only 5 of them are nose to tail right now. So I think that outside line is very quickly dying. And it may end up going into a bit of a single car train here at the front, which, if you think about the fact that we have the potentiality of green flag pit stops coming up, that might not necessarily be such a bad thing.
No, not at all. And, you know, you're probably going to see if the top lane dies like you're talking about, that's a good indicator of, hey, these guys are getting ready to pit, getting ready to dive off, you know, communicating that. That looks like it's really starting to fall off in that top lane, so maybe see green flag stops here pretty quick.
Curtis Kenyon just went down. Oh, a car up into the wall. I think that might have been the 00 of Kevin Fione. It was. Brushed the wall there off of 2. Looked like he made a little contact with somebody, but he kept it straight. We're still green.
Yeah, and that shouldn't hurt him too bad. You know, generally on these trucks, they're pretty tough. The caddies Monday, those things, you tap the wall, and my goodness, that would start pulling like crazy. So these are obviously more durable pieces of equipment than that, but we'll see how that hinders them kind of going forward here.
Talked about, obviously, on track. The big one always looms, but pit road is just as much of a monster in terms of you have to mentally remember not only do you not want to run into somebody else that's coming to pit road with you, but you have to remember you got to get that truck down to 55 miles per hour. At this type of a racetrack, it doesn't exactly lose you a lap to have to come down and serve a pass through, but it has you come to pit road all by yourself, and then you lose out of the draft.
Yeah, that's where you do not want to be. That's why the coordination of having, safe entry and then having teammates with you to be able to watch yourself and that. We got more cars diving off right there. Chris James leader, he's in.
Yep, he is in, as well as second place, Leisure. Looked like as well the 79 of Dixon came to pit road. Just about like maybe the entire top four and others came to pit lane.
Yeah, interesting there because it was kind of a mix of guys. We talked about Tyler Dixon being teammates with Curtis Kenyon. Kenyon stayed out right there. Dixon's the one that came in, so they've definitely had to go some different strategies. And now Vic Bloom's out there just kind of right in front. He's behind the four of Chris W. Jordan and a couple of guys ahead of him, Shane D. Matova and Dallas Myhan. So I don't know if they had kind of pitted previously or they just fell back.
I don't know. It's kind of interesting, too, when the leaders caught up to those three you were just talking about there, D. Matova, Hingley, and Jordan. They kind of were content to just ride behind them. They didn't try passing them, and now Vic Bloom hits pit road along with M. Daniel Martinez. Curtis Kenyon, I believe, is also on pit road. Yep. So now we're starting to see the second group of cars or trucks come to pit road. Be interesting to see now where Group 1 and Group 2 come out in relation to each other.
Right. Well, and the difference in there is going to be how quick each group gets hooked up. That's a really tough part of that. Being able to try to hook up properly off pit road and really take advantage of getting up to speed as quick as possible. And I'm really impressed with both groups, how they got in there pretty clean, and everybody seems to be, getting out of there really well as well.
This is where it's going to get interesting because you can see here this group, Chris Jones, Sean Leisure, and Marcus Frickeneck, they are lined up nose to tail, 1, 2, 3. They will probably cycle around to first, second, third, but then there's a big gap to some of those other guys. So this is now where you really have to have patience and the willingness to work together to get your pack up with the lead pack.
Right. Just having a group of three, they're going to, as you mentioned, they're going to kind of get a little bit of some distance on some of these guys coming out now. But as long as you get with that second group, 5, 6, 7 guys lined up, they're going to catch this group really quickly.
Vic Bloom cycled out to the lead, but he's going to be a sitting duck because he's by himself. Chris James has 2 trucks behind him, and they are going to reel him in very quickly. Then you got that group starting to form back behind them. M. Daniel Martinez, Curtis Kenyon kind of leading that group. So we could have about a 15-truck group in just a moment here if they all stay lined up.
Yeah, now Bloom just had to kind of pull over right there to Chris James, Sean Leisure, and Marcus Frickeneck because they had a big amount of speed coming towards him.
It is so difficult, too, when you're by yourself and you've got a pack of 3 or 4 behind you to be able to tuck in line and keep in their draft, because it's almost like you have to have it at a science. You have to have it perfect, or else they're going to pull away, and that's what we're seeing right there. It looks like Vic Bloom's going to have to fall back to that second group before he catches back up to the top trio.
And hearing about an unfortunate break for M. Daniel Martinez, he's got some, I guess, internet issues, and he's being requested to drop to the backfield. Oh, we got a car on the wall. It's 27.
Jonathan Cogwell, and we are still green.
No caution.
Trying to get to him. Looks like there's another car that might have been involved. Scott Haney in the 3 was coming to pit road.
Yeah, he was. He was trying to duck down, and I think that was caused, unfortunately, by M. Daniel Martinez and that kind of connectivity issue. He was trying to find a way to drop back and get out of the draft, but he just didn't have really anywhere else to go.
Green, as the 27 has fired it up, he is still going straight. And it looks like he will be able to get that car back up to speed. Scott Haney, you see there. Now, I don't know, would they necessarily not have him serve a black flag for coming to pit road to avoid an incident?
That is a tough call. Usually, the track officials just kind of have to use their jurisdiction on that. It's one of those deals, obviously, you can't control your internet sometimes. If you cause a wreck on it and it causes caution, obviously, yes, you're going to serve that EOL. I'm not sure how they're going to go about it because he was requested to drop right before that. So we'll see how they handle it. Could result in a black flag, but I think they're going to take a second to at least discuss it and then go from there.
Haney right now seems to be running down there on the apron, so I almost wonder if he might have gotten penalized and might be calling it an evening. As up at the front right now, still this front 3, but then You look behind them, and you've got a second group of 3. That is Vic Bloom, and he's got a couple of lap machines there with him. The 11 of Matthew Weeks, and I believe that's the 24 of Colin Bowden as well. So we'll see if maybe those 3 can catch up to the top 3. Then it's a long ways back, but I think it was the warping machine of M. Daniel Martinez that kind of had Tyler Dixon and company lose so much ground.
Yeah, they had to check up big time and get that all sorted out there. It looks like really other than Scott Haney, there's no other big victims involved in that besides obviously Jonathan Cogswell and Scott Haney, those 2 27-3. But Chris Martin kind of caught a break there because he was right in the thick of that in that 29, and he escaped, maybe some damage. So we'll see if they get hooked up, and if they do, I mean, they could easily get caught right back up.
Right now, Tyler Dixon is scored in the 5th position, and we've now with these green flag pit stops have seen some drivers pop up into the top 10 we haven't talked about. Joseph Costello, Brady Clark, Derek Self's up there, and Michael Schlegelmich is also there in the 20 machine. Right now, that is the completion of your top 10. So the green flag pit stops always seem to bring up into the top 10, up towards the front, guys that maybe had been riding just before the pit stops began. Oh,
definitely some riders in there. I mean, you talk about Michael Schlegelmilch. I mean, he started 30th in this race, so he's already made up a ton of spots. Joseph Costello in the 60, he's already up to 6. He started 23rd, so some of these guys may be saying, all right, hey, we're not going to get our cautions, so let's start moving, getting on the prowl a bit.
Now looking here at the lap times, and right now, it almost looks like the lap times are somewhat similar between the top 3 and these guys back here in the pack. And of course, racing side by side, I think, is only going to hinder them more. They got to get themselves lined up single file if they're going to be able to run fast enough lap times to reel in not only Vic Bloom in 4th, but the top 3.
Well, not only that, but Vic Bloom's group with a couple lappers that we mentioned there, of the 24 of Colin Bowden and then the 11 of Matthew Beeks, they have caught the group.
They have
Chris James, Sean Leeser, and Marcus Frickeneck. So that's, as you mentioned, that's going to make it really hard for that second group to start making up some ground.
And they've also added another driver, Kevin LaPointe, there in the 39. So you've got about a 7-car single-file draft up here. 4 of those drivers on the lead lap, 3 of them off the lead lap. But still, if they're up to speed, they're certainly going to help your cause.
Oh, no doubt. And, those lap down cars are just trying to kind of stick on the end of this. Maybe be able to take a wave around or something like that. So they're very, very much going to be willing to work with those lap cars and, or lead lap cars and do whatever they got to do to stay up in this lead group.
I believe that the green flag pit stops, they took place back on lap 34 and 35. So do we speculate that that's as far as they can go, or was that a short pit strategy to be able to maybe make it on the rest of the way?
Generally, at a super speedway, you want to stretch that fuel as far as possible. I couldn't imagine with these trucks that you'd be able to run, 65 laps on a tank of fuel. Usually that's just not the case. It doesn't stretch that far. So I imagine that's probably as far as they could take it. Obviously, some guys probably were able to stay out an extra lap or 2, being in the draft most of the time and saving some of that fuel.
Educated guess, you're saying we're probably going to have at least one more pit stop, probably within the lap 70 to 75 range.
Yeah, that's going to be your hotbed right there, and then from there it's a full-on sprint, obviously, as long as it stays green and there's no cautions. And we'll see if that second pack can find a way to get hooked back up, because that's where you're going to have to do it. There's just too many guys, I think, that second pack, led by Tyler Dixon at 79, to really, as you mentioned, catch up to that top group, because they're just side by side. You can't make up time that way.
I mean, side draft, it's almost literally, with this side-by-side we got going on right here between Dixon and Kenyon there on the outside, what they're actually doing is they're pulling each other back because of the side draft. It's slowing down their forward progress.
Right, that's kind of one of the nuances of super speedway racing that people don't think about, when they're new to it or haven't done a lot. So maybe that's something that they're just not really aware of. They're saying, hey, we're fine right here. We just got to keep pushing. And as you mentioned, we're just not quite realizing maybe they're dragging each other back and preventing them from really making up some time. By the lap here, they're just losing more and more time to that top pack.
I mean, you mentioned, the one possibility they have of getting themselves organized, getting lined up, and trying to run down the top 4. But The other thing that could also help them is a caution. The only issue is this really seems to be the area of the group where a caution might actually take place. So you want the caution, but you don't want to be the caution.
Yeah, that's where you start joking around with your teammates and say, "Hey, bud, you're in the back. You want, give us a little spin down." But seriously, yeah, that's just you got to be really careful. Seeing some guys on that bottom lane. That's
speaking of, there it is.
Joshua Persnet calling out over the mic there. Woo.
Oh my goodness! Yep, that was, I believe, it says the 95 on the screen, but it's not the 95. I believe that was the 00 that actually went up into the wall.
Oh yeah, it was.
And there were another couple of cars that got involved as well in that one. I believe the 88 of Jacob Adams got a piece of that one, and that was a 3-wide situation that actually started back in the tri-oval. I think the 60 went down on the apron, Joseph Costello, and that's what got them 3-wide and caused that incident up in turn 1.
Yeah, and that's unfortunate. You see that sometimes where a guy maybe just doesn't want to be in a certain situation like that, but he winds up there and he maybe panics a little bit, just doesn't know quite what to do with it.
I can guarantee you there are 4 people that did not want to see that caution, and that was the top 4.
No doubt about it, because now it gives that second group or guys that were in that second group a big chance to really catch up and do some things there. Oh man!
As we are working our first caution, we'll try and go back and see what brought that yellow out. I believe the 81 of Derek Self was in the vicinity of that as well.
Yeah, I think he was the one that got turned, or was part of getting turned by that 60, as you mentioned, or the 88 maybe got him, because the 88 was in the sucker hole right there of Jacob Adams.
You're right. That's exactly who it was.
Yeah, that's just unfortunate. Yep. Jacob didn't really do anything too bad there. I think it might have even been a little bit of connect code, but let's see.
It is hard to tell. It kind of looked like maybe the 81 came down a little bit, but there does look like there was a bit of daylight in between there, so it could have been net code. And then there was a wreck actually further back behind them.
Right, and that's going to happen at super speedways when you're trying to check up for the wreck in front of you. Guys start splicing everywhere, and that creates more chaos behind it.
There's
a group back there. It looked like Logan Shea's group back there in the 03.
I think it was, yep. We can see what happened with that. There's a little bit of connection issues with some of these guys, so it's hard to be able to pinpoint some of these guys with the replay. So for those watching, beg your indulgence.
Yes. May have been. I can see it. It looks like Richard Hines in the 87 back there. He may have triggered that in the back. Getting a hold of the 31 of... Let me get that name real quick. That'd be... oh goodness, Steven Schumann. Maybe he tagged him trying to check up.
Yep, you're right. And 00 actually did get caught up in that one, Kevin Fione.
Yep. Yeah, and that's just
trucks disappearing. That just shows you the internet quality of some of these guys towards the back. So,
and then Logan Shea gets involved in that, he was up top, had nowhere to go when that got tagged, and it's just a tough break for those guys back there because the wreck's happening in front. You're trying to get on the brakes, you're trying to survive it, and then all of a sudden, there you go.
Obviously, Jones, Leisure, frickin' Nick, as well as Bloom, did not want to see that yellow. My assumption is we're not going to see them pit, though, because like we said, they're kind of chasing lap 75 is when they're going to make that final pit stop, so I don't think they want to give up this track position.
Yeah, no doubt. You're not going to see the guys up front pit right here. There's just really no reason for them to, because it's going to throw off your cycle usually, and it looks like there were some guys in the top 10, like Dixon and some of those guys that were part of that big second group, got a little bit of damage. Of course, they're going to pit. And some guys back there that didn't get part of the damage just said, hey, we're already back here, might as well take some tires and fuel. So
to tell with the connection issues who the driver would be that would get the lucky dog, but if I'm reading this correctly, it might end up being the 27, which I believe was the one that had that spin off of 4 that didn't bring out the caution, but he did go a lap down because of it.
Yeah, Jonathan Cogswell out there in that 27 was kind of limping around a bit, as you mentioned. Took some damage off that incident that did not result in a caution. It'd be a great break from him because he gets back on the lead lap, gets a chance to repair some damage, and just see what he could do. Although it was some significant damage, so I don't know if he'll be quite up to speed.
Some drivers that were on pit road for damage repairs: Steven Schumann, Derek Self, Logan Shea. Jacob Adams, I think, has actually taken his car behind the wall.
He has, yes.
Tough break there for him, as he was part of the incident that brought out, amazingly enough, only our first caution of the evening. But here's the thing I was going to bring up to you, but I figured I would kind of wait till we got a little bit further into the evening. When is it go time for these drivers? I mean, I know we still got that one round potentially of pit stops still to go, but is this the point where you start pushing, you start testing out maybe what can my truck do, so I have a little bit of an idea of what I'm capable of when we get down to the final 10 laps? Or do you wait until after that final round of pit stops before you start trying to make some moves?
One, it depends on the experience of the guy. So guys that are more comfortable with the speedway already. So let's look at a guy like Joshua Personet in that 7 car. That's a guy that we've seen have a lot of success on the super speedways. He knows what he's doing. He's still probably going to hang back until the very end, until it's probably 10, 15 laps to go, and then he's going to push. You get some of these newer guys that maybe aren't so comfortable with it, like a Curtis Kenyon. I know he's damaged, but he'd be a good example of just a guy that this is a new environment for him. So maybe he takes this opportunity when everybody's re-bunched up to say, okay, I'm going to make a couple moves, nothing crazy, but just to kind of see the limits of my car. Then you relax for a few laps, and then probably about that 15, 10-lap range, as long as everybody's bunched up, that's when you're going to see the push, and that's when it's going to be craziness, and you just go from there.
Oh, it's kind of interesting. I was just noticing a couple of guys up here that were actually close to a lap down around the time the green flag pit stops began, but they were riding at the back the entirety of this first half. Now they're up here inside the top 10. Shane DiMantova, Chris Jordan, Dallas Myhan, they're right now lined up 7th through 9th. So that just shows how different strategies, all of a sudden they come together and you think, wow, where'd these guys come from?
Right, that's just, oh man, that's a big part of just the luck that is super speedway sometimes of when the caution is going to come out. As you mentioned, they're right there, potentially facing being lapped, just played out in their favor, and now all of a sudden, they're sitting pretty. They could kind of ride and get themselves right into the thick of things.
James decided to take the outside line for this restart. He will have Caleb Thompson as his drafting partner here, leaving the inside line open to Sean Leisure and Marcus Frickeneck. Green flag in the air, and boy, the 06 was on it. He knew how to time that start.
Yeah, the problem for him is, oh, there he goes. He dives down in front of Sean Leisure, so he's not going to get swooped up from behind there. Good job by him. The 04, Caleb Thompson, also dives down into that bottom lane.
I think it's a disadvantage for Jones. He spent pretty much this whole first half out in front. Doesn't really know what kind of a truck he's got in draft. So do you think that that's a little bit of a hindrance for him if he does get shuffled out in the later stages?
Just kind of judging on what I've seen from him in terms of pack, and obviously he was the pole sitter as well. I think he's one of these guys that has been on the sim, understands things. I don't think you'll have to worry about him handling, being behind somebody when eventually they get in front of him.
We have a couple of new names popping up here as well inside of the top 10, and you're looking at 2 of them right there. The 7 of Joshua Personet, the 98 of Joseph Chambers. And that's the one thing that I love about super speedway racing, is because everybody is pretty much on an even playing field. Everybody's got a shot at winning this race. And so guys that you don't look at in the first half, you see them up here in the second half and you think, boy, I didn't have them pegged as a driver to maybe look at. And all of a sudden, they're up there inside the top 10, and you have to say, oh, well, maybe I should consider them.
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah, I mentioned the pedigree of Joshua Personet, that 7. He's a guy, obviously, I'm just full clearance for him by co-owners with him on PRM, Personet Racing Motorsports. He did say, coming into the season, I guess this includes trucks, he wanted to be a bit more aggressive at the super speedways rather than just kind of chill out of the back the entire race. So I'm a bit surprised to see him in the top 10 so soon. And Joseph Chambers, yeah, I mean, started 21st up to 9th now, and just really having a solid run, clean truck. See if you can keep it going.
I have to be honest, too, and this is just me personally, but back when I did super speedway racing, I used to be scared to death. I'd run at the back. I didn't want to affect anything. But then I thought, you know what, let's try to take a more aggressive attitude. And the funny thing is, you seem to make less mistakes when you go out there and be aggressive than when you're actually out there trying to ride around and not make mistakes. I don't know why that's the fact of for me, and if it may be for other drivers, but it just seems how it is.
Yeah, and I think that just, because some drivers, they do better in terms of focus when they're, making the moves they want to make. Obviously, you got to make smart moves, but still, like you're mentioning, hey, if you're comfortable with being aggressive and you can make it work and, mind your P's and Q's that way, that's better than if you're going to be uncomfortable riding around the back hoping nothing happens to you. And it just all comes down to that preference and what you're more comfortable with.
We set basically the target lap furthest they could go at 75, but they did have about 2 to 3 laps of pacing there with that caution. So how far back do you think that pushes the range for these drivers now?
That's probably going to add a couple laps. You might see some guys be able to stretch it out to 80. There are some guys that pitted under that caution that were clean cars that were kind of in the back, so they may be able to stay out until, the final, 10 laps or so. So that might be interesting. Now, the problem with that is you don't want to wait too long. Because if you wait too long, then you might lose some time potentially with the whole cycle of everything. So, yeah, it's going to be probably an extended range of anywhere from 75 to now 90. You might see pits stop stretched out through there.
Just saw the onboard there with Sean Leisure. And in terms of these trucks, visibility, like how much visibility is there for a guy, either behind a truck trying to make a move or the truck that's in front of them looking in his rearview mirror trying to block?
Yeah, it all depends on how close you are to that truck. That's one thing, personally, I never enjoyed being on the tail end of somebody unless I absolutely have to, because the visibility, it's not great. These are wide trucks, more so obviously than the Cup and the Xfinity, so it messes with you a bit. You really got to know what you're doing. If you're going to be stuck behind somebody, you got to be comfortable with the person in front of you that they're going to hold a good line.
Like for right now, they're pretty content to run single file, probably shooting for that final green flag pit stop. But I think if anybody up here towards the front does try and jump out and make that second line, it's probably going to be Frickenek, because he was the one back in the first stage that was trying to make that outside line work. The question is, if he goes up there, would anyone else be willing to go with him?
That's a good question. I think you might have some of those guys. You got the 28, Adi Mantova and Dallas Myhan of the 41. They're teammates. They're two guys that, hey, maybe they say, let's make some moves. We've been riding around the back. They jump out there. You got some more experienced guys back there, too, that might jump out. The only problem with that is it might take a minute to get kind of lined up properly and be able to do what you want on that outside.
I believe that the first car that hit pit road for the cycle at pit stops was Chris James. So do you think he's going to be the Pied Piper again to make the move and draw everybody to pit road? Or does somebody maybe try and jump the gun? I mean, if we think about it too, one thing that we didn't bring up, these drivers came to pit road around lap 35 or so. That was the latest they came to pit lane. So the fuel window would open up within about the next 9 laps or so. Would anybody short pit and come to pit road before they have to, and maybe try and get a group that way to make up some ground for when everybody else comes to pit road when there's pretty much low on fuel?
Potentially. That's always a risky business, because you never want to be in a situation where you have to save fuel down the final stretch run of a race like this, where you have to pedal a little bit, because then you're going to be losing time. There's going to be guys, especially with where the caution fell, that are going to be comfortable pitting in this range we're talking about, have no issues with making it to the end. So it's going to be real interesting on that aspect. Another deal that's kind of underrated, I assume most guys will take no tires, but tires could factor in. Some people have taken 4, some haven't taken any. Maybe somebody says, hey, I want to take 2, and then you get a guy that takes 0 ahead of you. Now you've lost time that way. So there's a lot of different layers to how this is going to play out in the end if it stays moving.
I was wrong. Frickenek was not the guy to go to the top side. It's Personet, actually, with the help of Joseph Costello, as well as Colin Bowden in the 24, and they're making that outside line move.
Yeah, sorry, I think I cut out there for a minute. Had some issues.
You actually are cutting out a little bit here on my end, so hopefully Tyler's able to get the technical difficulties resolved. Till he comes back, though, this outside line is actually working now. Personette has been able to get up alongside of second place, and I have to say, too, it almost looks like the outside line's formed up a little bit better than it was earlier on. Colin Bowden back there. Kendall Noah Player is up on the top side as well. Chris Jordan's up there in the 4. I believe that's Dustin Dewar in that red, white, and blue scheme as well. So you've got a couple of guys there in Personette, Player, Jordan, Dewar that we've seen in other series. They know how each other race, and so they're willing to go up there and work together. And they are making some progress up there on that top side. We'll see if Personette can actually lead the top group around. And this is interesting, too, that all this is taking place within about maybe 16 to 18 laps of that final round of pit stops. Up alongside of second place is Personette, and whoa, Costello looked really loose behind him, but keeps it alongside. And whoa, look at this, might be doing a little bit of pushing through the tri-oval, and maybe that's why that outside line is working so good as they make their way around a slower machine, and they are side by side. Personette is there. We got a car up in the wall. I think that was the truck that was trying to get out of the way of the leaders. No yellow as he keeps it straight, but Personette edges out ahead, and for the first time tonight, we're going to possibly have a lead change under green flag conditions, pit stops notwithstanding, and Personette almost sideswiped one of those lap trucks trying to get out of the way. The 27 that was up there, and it was hard to tell who the other truck was, and that may have stalled out that line a little bit. I think we've got Tyler back.
Yeah, sorry about that, folks. Random internet issues. I don't know. Everything's been running smooth. Has been for a while, so I don't know why that one happened.
All good. You can't predict technology.
No, you can't. We have learned that many times.
And just like that, that outside line got stalled out because of those two slower trucks. But look at this. Ooh, Leisure took a little peek out there. Thought about maybe leading that outside line. And now, oh, we're going to be 3 wide. I think the door was left open, but Frickenix not going to take it.
Yeah, just very patient there by freaking Nick. I mean, might as well, be careful in all your moves right here.
We've got about 17 trucks up in this lead group, the last of which I believe is the 8 of Brian Delp. It looks like it's going to be between these 17 trucks to probably finish this thing out, provided we don't have another yellow.
Yeah, that's a good-sized pack right there to kind of finish out with. You're going to see some crazy racing, I'm sure, and that's where maybe some of these guys that pit during this green flag cycle, if that group stays together long enough, especially gets hooked back up after a green flag cycle, that could be a cause of some big action.
Dewar with no help there on the top side, and pretty impressed there with Kevin Fione being able to keep his truck up here, because I think he got a little piece of the wreck when we had our first caution, and oh boy, Personette got left out to dry. I don't know if he went up there himself or not, and boy, Costello trying to side draft off Vic Bloom, and he nearly got himself hooked around.
Yeah, they're getting a little bit more racy now. Personette, he's one of those guys that really likes to experiment a little bit late in the run, so that does not surprise me at all that not necessarily got left out, but he likes to just kind of do his own thing sometimes.
Saw them side by side, several rows deep, and is there any importance to gaining positions on track before a round of green flag pit stops?
Not really. I mean, unless you're trying to, find your teammates and, get with them. That's about the only importance sometimes of that. Most of the time, it's easier just to drop back to the tail end of the pack and do that to be able to, make sure you guys are together and in sync.
Bowden was trapped up top, but he just slotted in front of Chris Jordan, so he's back to 8th. Now we've got a lot of slower trucks out here. There's another group of 3 there on the top side. And, for the most part, they've done a good job of keeping out of the way, but a lot of them were having some difficulty getting up to that third group, as you alluded to earlier, when they're double wide behind you.
Yeah, and, you talk about that group of 3 up there. A couple of those guys with some big damage. That 79 Tyler Dixon, then the 13 of Dylan Hickey, and then Rishav Kosla behind them. It doesn't look too bad on his truck, but he definitely does have some damage. So they're just out here, kind of hoping for another caution and finding a way to finish on the lead lap.
At Dixon right now would be the first truck one lap down after he and Hickey both got lapped there. Kosla is right now 2 laps down. So Dixon and Hickey are right now currently battling for the lucky dog spot if we should get a yellow. And that's a tough break there for Dixon too, because he spent the first 30-40 laps up inside of the top 3.
Yeah, was riding really strong, looked comfortable up there in that pack on the bottom lane, and just that's the unfortunate part of getting struck by the caution. Could happen anytime, anywhere, and be in your pack, and you just can't do much about it.
Colin Bowden trying to make something happen there on the top side. No takers to go with him, so he slots back in front of Chris Jordan. So for these guys now, it looks like we've got only 14 trucks up in this lead pack. Person at the last of those. So a couple of guys lost the lead group. And they're back here. Demantova, Dallas Myhan, Kendall Noah Player. I think it might have been the slower trucks that broke them up. Or are these guys currently with where they're at? Are they still in the draft, do you think?
Seeing that Myhan is about just over a second off of Joshua Personette in the 7. Most of the time, as long as you got your momentum about you and you're matching, that's right about the extended range of being able to catch that draft.
Kendall Noah Player ended up winning that Cadillac race at Daytona back on Monday, so you kind of wonder if he has any last-minute magic here in his pocket. And there's your answer right there. Yeah, they actually just reeled Joshua Personette in, so I think they are still caught up in this lead draft. And they might have actually been doing that on purpose. Maybe they didn't like something they saw up at the front, so they wanted to give themselves a little bit of space. Or they might have been maybe doing a little bit of saving there.
Saving, and I think, they're probably planning on some pit strategy maybe. Because Personette and Kendall Noah Player, we know, former teammates from PRM. And then, as mentioned, Myhan and D. Mantova right there as well, teammates. Maybe that's kind of one of those alliances we talked about earlier, where you find yourself in this situation and say, hey, let's go ahead and work together and see what we can do here at the end of the race.
It's going to be a while before the leaders catch up to more drivers on the tail end of the lead lap. Looking here at 18th and 19th place, Curtis Kane and Brent Jones. They are just now going into turn 1. Race leaders are coming out at turn 4, so they'll probably catch him within the next 5 to 6 laps, but that, of course, is also going to be right within the realm of when these drivers will be looking to make their final stop of the day.
Yeah, that could get real spicy real quick. You could see some of these guys say, hey, let's go ahead and pit before we catch this group and make sure that we don't, have any issues there, because that group as well, they may have to pit at some point soon. They do have some damage if they're off the pace, but we don't know their fuel situation.
This is what we would call the money stop. This is really the pit stop that's going to make or break your race, whether you're going to be in the conversation for this win or not. And look at this. We got a car up in the wall. That is the 24, and I think the caution's going to fly. It is. Colin Bowden hooked it straight up into the outside wall hard. And there goes the idea of green flag pit stops. This might put them within the fuel window to make it the rest of the way if they pit now.
Yeah, it should be pretty close right there, and that's unfortunate for Colin, having a great run and just found himself a little bit on the wrong side of the 60s bumper there, and that caused that one right there. It's tough for Colin Battle.
Yes, it was. He was slotted around the 8th position, and boy, that truck went straight up into the wall. That was a scary hit.
Yeah, he initially took a little bump, got loose, tried to correct it and save, and then took another bump coming back up the track. Joseph Costello at that point, as soon as the first bump is made, Costello really had nowhere to go on that, couldn't do much at that point. That's what results in that. He'll probably wind up getting the OL, I'd imagine, but he does have damage, so he'll probably be back there anyways. Tough break for him as well, running in the top 10.
It's hard to tell. When he hit, it looked like his car kind of started blinking a bit, and I couldn't tell if the 32 of Dustin Dewar hit him or if the 24 disappeared right when he got to the 24 car.
Yeah, that one's, we'll see how that goes here. And sometimes with iRacing too, being in spectator mode, it's really weird. I think Dewar kind of got lucky right there and avoided that. Maybe kind of had one of those situations where as you mentioned, the 24 just blinks enough in terms of the connection, and Newark escapes maybe unharmed.
Full of cars that looked like they may have gotten pieces of that. The 20 of Michael Schlegelmilch, as well as the 8 of Brian Delp. We'll have to see just how significant the contact was for both of those drivers, if they're going to be able to make repairs or be able to continue overall. And here we go. The pit stops have begun. This is what we projected. This is about maybe 5 to 7 laps earlier. But do you think here under pacing they can save enough to make it the rest of the way, or are we looking at drivers having to save under green flag conditions?
I think with the pacing and, just getting the fuel full tank right now, you should be fine in terms of a fuel run. You shouldn't have any issues. Maybe, and this is a slight percent of, possibility, the guy that's going to be out in front leading the pack might be a little less fuel than the other guys, but I don't think it's going to be enough to really, cause him to stress about not having enough fuel.
We talked about the money stop, and we were kind of speculating it being under green flag conditions, but how about the team of Sean Leisure, getting him out in front ahead of Chris Jones? So he is going to be the control car when we go back green, and this is going to maybe be a little bit of reversed roles. It's been Leisure pushing Jones all race long. Now it's going to be Jones that will have to push Leisure on this restart.
Yeah, it's also going to tell us a lot where the loyalty between those two lie, because Sean Leisure has pushed Chris James pretty much all this race and, never wavered on that. So is Chris James going to return to favor, obviously, until you get down to the last 3 or 4 laps, or is he going to immediately try to vie for that lead and stick on the outside?
And one driver that was probably pretty happy to see that caution come out would have been Tyler Dixon. I believe he is the recipient of the free pass. Well, actually, no. I think they're actually scoring the 13 ahead of him, so it actually might be Dylan Hickey that will be the free pass car. We'll have to wait and see about that.
It does look by the scoring that that's the case. Either way, I think both of those two, a little bit of damage. So I don't know how they're going to be able to, handle trying to stay in the draft, although I think Dixon's damage in that 79 is probably a bit more manageable, since it looks like it's all to the rear bumper. That doesn't affect the draft as bad, whereas Hickey, he's got front bumper issues that might really hinder his horsepowers.
I think the pit road was just open there for lap down cars, and neither Tyler Dixon nor the 39 of Kevin LaPointe came down pit road, so I think they are thinking wave around here. And maybe not such a bad decision, because, we still are going to have probably about a little bit more than 25 laps to go. We may not have seen a last caution, and more trucks that retire out of the race are more positions they pick up in the finishing results.
Oh, no doubt about it. It's just a no-brainer at that point to risk it and say, hey, if I got to pit again, no biggie. You're at Daytona. There's a good chance you may not even go a lap down, as long as you're able to stay with that lead pack and then, pit quickly and get off properly. Low risk there for these guys that are taking away from that.
Got the question mark about, if these guys are going to be good to go on fuel. My assumption is yes, but I think they have to be a little bit aware of their fuel gauges. But one guy that decided to stay out, lead a lap, and then pit the lap after, and that was Kendall Noah Player. So you got to wonder if he's got something up his sleeve, thinking, okay, these guys, they're going to be looking at their fuel gauges. I might not have to do that because I got 1 extra lap in the tank.
Oh, knowing Kendall Noah Player, that does not surprise me at all. That is full-on way sinking right there. And he's a guy we saw in the Caddy race Monday night. As you mentioned, stayed back the entire time pretty much until his go time in those last few laps. So I think that's his play tonight as well, just keeping himself out of trouble, and then get down to the closing lap saying, all right, let's see what I can do here.
I think if we don't count him staying out the extra lap and being up at the front leading that lap, I don't think the 94 has run any higher than 14th here tonight. So we have definitely not seen him charge to the front. And as you said, with what we saw on Monday night, I think maybe now it's go time, and we may end up saying his name at the end of the evening. But this is going to be an interesting restart now, because Jones has enjoyed the view out in front all night long. Now he's going to have to be the one that does the push in. And like I said earlier, does this put him now at a disadvantage, being out in front, knowing what his car is like in clean air, but now not really knowing how his car is going to handle in terms of trying to make moves for the lead, being the second place truck?
Yeah, and I'd be more worried about him trying to go on that outside. Obviously, Leisure is on the outside for this restart, but Chris James, if he has to make that move, all he's done is run the inside, and that's probably where maybe he's not comfortable on that outside. Really, it might hinder him trying to make a run out there as opposed to doing it on the inside.
We're going to have 19 trucks still on the lead lap. Actually, make that 20 trucks as Tyler Dixon got back on the lead lap, taking that wave around. So we'll see how many trucks we're going to have still on the lead lap when we get to the checkers. It's going to be 28 laps to go with the green flag in the air.
Good jump there by Leisure. He's going to pull down in front of Chris James at 06. So it looks like, the pack, the loyalty is still there between the two.
All right, there, when the 67 ducked down low, the second car in line, the top side, Kevin Finn, saw a little bit of damage there on the left rear quarter panel and also there on that rear spoiler. Does that affect him speed-wise, do you think, especially trying to be a lead truck?
Oh, no doubt about it, and I would not be surprised within a lap or two you see him get shuffled out pretty quick because he should be fine to push because the damage is to the rear, but as you're mentioning, I don't think there's any way he's going to carry speed as the lead car.
They had that caution, they made that pit stop, so do you think we're in the realm now of go time for all these guys?
Oh, I think so. I mean, we saw in the first stretch of the race, everybody was 2x2, but it was pretty clean. There wasn't a lot of pushing. You should, after the first few laps here and they get sorted out, there's going to be some people step up to that top lane and maybe try to make some big moves.
We've seen two drivers try and be the lead truck here in this race on that outside line. Right now, the third place car, Marcus Frickenek, is one of those. The other one was Joshua Personette, but right now he is running back in the 18th position. There you see him actually up there on that outside line. Looks like they're actually trying to get an outside line formed back there, but that's a second group that need to get caught back up here to the first group.
Yeah, maybe they're still playing it a bit off, just saying, hey, let these guys get racy for them, but maybe they're thinking it's still too early to really start pushing. Plus, with that lead car they got, I think that's Dylan Hickey in the 13. He's got, and now he's going to get passed, yeah. So he was having some speed issues, obviously, with that damage. So we'll see how that kind of plays out here.
You've got Joseph Costello, Kendall Noah Player, and Joshua Personette going around him on the top side. Brent Jones, I think that truck may still be up to speed. He was lucky to get that yellow flag, stay on the lead lap. And you've also got Curtis Kenyon there as well. I think he got a little bit of damage from the first caution, but I think that truck also could still be up to speed.
Yeah, as far as the front bumpers and sides, everything's looking good. He's got just a bit of a wrinkle on the right rear of the bumper. That should be fine. Problem is now he's stuck behind Hickey trying to work around. He's lost that front three ahead of him.
So we got to see if Costello, Player, and Personette are going to be able to catch up to this lead group. What they need for that front group to do, which are 13 trucks right now, is to get themselves double wide. If they do that, that's going to slow them down, allow that single file group of three to draft right back up into the lead pack.
Yeah, this first group is staying surprisingly single file. It seems like they just want to kind of ride around a little bit, tick off some more laps before they start getting crazy.
Yeah, well, they were starting to dance around there towards the back. That was Dustin Dewar, D. Mantova, Dallas Myhan. They were all kind of trying to see if there was an outside line to be had down the back straightaway, but all tucked back down to the inside going into three.
Yeah, sometimes you just got to kind of do that in a run like this. See if there's any early takers. If not, just make sure you keep the draft of the lead pack and tuck yourself back in. Save it for a few more laps.
Sean Leisure, who spent pretty much the first 3/4 of this race looking at the back bumper of Chris Jones, now looks in his rearview mirror, sees the front bumper of Jones, and now you gotta wonder, obviously there was an alliance going on between those two, but now as we start getting down to the closing stages, all alliances are out the window, so I don't think that Chris Jones is going to show quite the same amount of courtesy to Leisure that Leisure showed to him in the first 3/4 of this race.
Yeah, that would really surprise me if that's the case. And, the unique thing about this series, though, I guess, is because it's more of a approval series, more of a developmental series, if you will. Some of these guys may come into it like a Chris James and say, hey, I don't have to win this race. As long as I run in the top 5, that's all I care about, because there's different goals in that sense. You're running for points, obviously, but, the championship isn't going to be anything crazy. It's more about just making sure you can get yourself into the upper series. So.
I understand what you're saying, but I've talked with so many people in post-race interviews, and I said, were you thinking about points, having to point your way into something? And they're like, no, I put the helmet on. I'm a driver. I want to win.
Oh, yeah. That's my boy Gerald Campbell, the Cup champion. That is exactly how he is. I myself as a driver, I'm a big points guy, big picture guy. Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, there's a lot of guys that just say, hey, I don't care. I want to get in there, get up front, lead the race, win the race.
Now, still single file. They're kind of fanning out there towards the very back, but right now we've only got 13 cars up in this lead group. So if we see a second line generate, do you think we start to see it form towards the back of this group, or does someone towards the front try and be the Pied Piper in the second line?
I mean, Marcus Frickenick, we saw him do it early in the race, and so I'm imagining probably that's going to be the point guy in terms of trying to lead that charge on the outside. I'm not sure if people, towards the tail end of this group really want to force that issue in terms of taking the charge of it. But I think that's the guy to look at.
It's what's called a chess match here at Daytona and Talladega, a 190-mile-an-hour chess match, because you don't want to make the move too early and you don't want to make the move too late. You have to make it just right, and all the pieces have to fall into place for it to be successful.
Oh, and it is an art in every sense of the word. It takes practice. It takes, thoughtful planning out and just making sure, as you mentioned, you make it too early, that's probably not the worst thing. The one thing you for sure don't want to do is make it too late, because then you put yourself in a situation where you just don't have enough time to make it up.
They're trying it back there. That's a side-by-side for 7th. That's Dallas Myhan leading that outside line. He's also got Shane DiMantova up there, Dustin Dewar, and I believe that's the 4 of Chris Jordan also helping. So they're trying to generate something. The question is now, do any of these guys up in the top 5 see that line coming, jump out, and try to help pull it along?
Oh, I think they'll think about it. And you got the 2 teammates leading it right there in DiMantova and Myhan. So all it takes is that one guy, especially in kind of a smaller pack like this, to be able to jump out there and just lead the charge on it. They're making up some decent ground right now on that top side.
There's 20 laps to go. Is it too soon to be doing something like this?
Not with how small this pack is. I mean, you're not really at a threat of 3 wide per se. I don't think it's big enough for that. There goes Vic Bloom. He goes to the top side to be able to take charge of it.
He just jumped out from the 4th position to help that outside line, and I kind of have a feeling that if they get up to him, maybe the 82 might jump out there as well. He's been pretty committed to trying to make a second line work all night long. The question is then, what do the 67 and the 06 do? Because, obviously I know that Leisure would love to stay committed to the bottom and have James as a drafting partner, but if that outside line is generating too much speed and getting a run on him, does he forfeit the bottom and jump up there to try and block the momentum of the outside line?
I don't know if he would, but I think, as we talked about earlier, it's going to really test the loyalty of Chris James, to see a run coming, as you mentioned, and say, hey, should I, kind of poke my head out here? And we got a crash.
That's DiMantova around, I believe, in the 20. It is not. Who was that?
That was, let's see here, that's the Alec.
Chambers?
I think that was, yeah.
That was the 98.
98, yep. He got hooked, it looked like. Not sure what happened.
Very similar to what happened to the 24 earlier, it looked like.
Oh, yeah. Looked like he took just a little bit of a weird bump from the 00, and that forced him below the L line, and then at that point, he really had nothing else he could do.
Comes out with a total of 18 laps to go, and what do we say? This changes everything.
Oh man, I mean this is going to be wild. Unfortunately, it looks like Joshua Person at the 7 got caught up in that wreck as well. He had 90 flipping on top of his car, truck. Oh my! Good to know a player.
You're absolutely
as well,
right. I think maybe a little contact for Chris Jordan in the 4 as well. It was hard to tell. If maybe he was benefited kind of like Dustin Dewar was on the last thing of having the truck blink just when he was there.
Yeah, I think you're right on that. He seems to be gotten through pretty clean. As mentioned, Killaloe player maybe took a little bit of damage. Brian Delt maybe caught just a little bit of it. But the worst for wear is definitely a 98 of Joseph Chambers, and then probably Joshua Personette as well is going to really maybe in their nights in terms of trying to compete for the win.
Believe that's going to put Rishav Kolsla in the 54 back on the lead lap. He was the first truck one lap down with this yellow flag coming out. The thing I'm wondering too is, we're going to get a restart now with less than 15 to go. Have we seen our last caution with, as you mentioned, as small a group as we have really up here of the up-to-speed trucks at the front?
Probably not, because as we're seeing throughout this race, all it takes is just one bad bump right now. I mean, these guys are still learning. It looks like a little bit of kind of where you can and can't touch on those back bumpers. So all it takes is that one little bump to cause a big wreck.
And that's the second time as well. I think it's the second caution in a row where it's been entering into a corner. And, we mentioned about that kind of accordion effect that you have where you get a big run on the truck in front of you who has to lift for the truck in front of him, who has to lift for the truck in front of him. And sometimes you get that one truck that doesn't lift. And I think that that's what's ended up having both the 24 and now most recently the 98 get hooked up into the wall.
Oh, yeah, no doubt about it. It's just at the speeds they're carrying and everything, there's really not much you can do. Once that starts happening, you got to, hope that people are going to check up in time. And, I mean, we saw it earlier on the first one where you had people wrecking behind the incident because they're trying to get checked up. And it could be a real mess if you're behind it.
We saw just before that caution came out, they were trying to get an outside line going. Now in this restart, drivers aren't going to have any choice. It's going to be double file, so there will be an outside line that'll be all formed up there when we go green. So do you think those guys stay committed to the outside line, or we're going to see what we saw in the last restart of guys trying to dip down as quickly as they can back down to that double yellow line?
You might get a couple guys dip down, get to the inside, just kind of get set up with their teammate, but I think it'll be a quicker process to get up to that top line, as you mentioned, and really go for that push. We saw Vic Bloom in that 99 jump out there, no problem, take charge on that, and so we'll see how it shakes out.
Well, this caution coming out, everybody can breathe a sigh of relief now, because if they were on pins and needles about the fuel situation, these pacing laps, I think, will definitely allow them to make it the rest of the way on fuel now. So that definitely helped these guys in terms of being able to now just focus their mindset on the task at hand, either stay at the front or get themselves to the front and not have to worry about another thing in the back of their mind of, am I going to run out in the final lap?
Oh, yeah, it's very freeing thought to realize, okay, we're good on fuel, we're good on pit stops. Now we can just kind of race. It's going to be that sprint finish, and this is obviously typical of the super speedways. We see a lot. Going to catch this restart with just over about 10 laps to go, and it's going to be a mad dash to that finish line.
You mentioned about Personette. You can still see the buckle there on the hood of that machine. The American Heart Association sponsoring his truck, but I don't know. It looks like he's kind of being the optimistic one here, thinking that truck's still going to be up to speed, but that little ripple there on the hood, I think, is going to really hurt him in terms of aerodynamics.
Oh, yeah, it would not surprise me at all if he's down a few horsepower on top of the aerodynamic part of that, and that's just, he's still on the lead lap, so he's got that. So at this point, he's probably just trying to bring home the best finish he possibly can. Probably, unfortunately, not a serious contender to win at this point, but hey, as long as you just kind of ride around, finish on the lead lap, things get crazy, you might wind up in the top 10.
Of guys look like they were a little bit off the pace, but they've been able to, despite getting caught up in earlier incidents, still be up here in the top 15. Curtis Kenyon there in 12th, Brent Jones in 13th. Right now, in terms of the trucks we've got up here towards the front, I would say maybe 12 at the most. Well, maybe 13 up to speed. You got your top 11, and I think maybe Kendall Noah Player and Kevin Finn might also still potentially be up to speed and might have something to say in the closing stages of this race. The problem for Kendall Noah Player is he's going to be restarting behind a couple of trucks that are slightly off the pace.
Yeah, and that's always tough to work around because obviously on restarts, maybe they're a little slow to get going. You just got to make sure you don't run over them. I think Kendall's damage wasn't too bad. I mean, seen a little bit of a ripple over the wheel well there on the left side on the hood, but I think he got a little bit lucky as well. We mentioned about Chris W. Jordan, that Ford, benefiting from maybe a little bit of a blink out there on the wreck, and I think Kendall benefited from that as well.
It's really all night long been Chris James and now Sean Leisure. Do you see anybody back here that looks like they've got the truck to muscle away a win from these top two?
Yeah, I mean, Marcus Frickinet, we know he was pushing the issue earlier. I think Vic Bloom's the guy. One guy that we have not talked about a lot that's quietly been up there, kept care of his truck really well. Caleb B. Thompson just been riding inside that top 10, kind of in line. He's got a perfectly clean truck. I don't see why he can't go up there and challenge as well. And I think the more important part is who's going to be able to really weave through the pack and kind of put themselves in position to strike on a Chris James or a Sean Leisure.
And I'm going to be interested to see as well about Demantova, Myhand. They've been kind of playing the conservative game as well. They have been on each other's back bumper all night long, and now they're lined up in 5th and 6th. We'll see if they've got something that they can do together here in the closing stages. It's going to be 14 laps to go. Green flag in the air. Question is the check or the white flag the next flag we see, or are we going to see another caution?
See how it goes here. It looks like Sean Leisure is not yet diving to the bottom, which in previous restarts finally now. And he's going to take Marcus Frickinet with him.
Oh, that was interesting. He didn't want the 06 on his bumper. He says, I'll take the 82 instead. And so he's going to have Frickinet now as his wheelman, but I don't think Frickinet's going to stay there very long.
Nah, keep your friends close and your enemies closer, right? So maybe that's what he's thinking right there with Frickinet being behind him and just trying to maybe trap him in that second place spot.
Big Bloom take a little look down the inside. Now you cannot pass with all 4 tires down below that double yellow line or else you get penalized. He had only 2, I believe, down there, and he did not advance his position. So that's one thing these drivers are going to have to be aware of as well. If they try making that darting move down to the bottom of the racetrack, that they do not go below that double yellow line.
Right, and one thing that the officials will consider too, similar to NASCAR, somebody gets forced down there, obviously, they're going to review that and make sure that that was the case, and sometimes that can't be helped, especially in these crazy final laps.
Oh, we saw an outside line start to get formed there before that last yellow. The guys that were doing it are all lined up nose to tail there. The 99 of Vic Bloom, the 28 of Shane Demantova, and the 41 of Dallas Myhand. So if Vic Bloom steps out, I think the 28 and 41 will go with him, and that actually, if they can all coordinate that together, they're going to have some pretty good momentum.
Oh, no doubt about it, because this front pack is really slimmed down, and now 3-4 cars on that outside is probably all you need, really, to make some good ground and try to get your way to the front.
There's only 9 trucks up in this lead group right now. Dustin Dewar, the last of those. You got that second groove back there with Costello, Finn, Jordan, Delp. Looks like they may be just barely up to speed enough to hang with that lead group, but I don't know. They've had all of those drivers, I think, have gotten involved in one incident or another, have got damage of some kind. So even if they do get up there, I don't know if they're going to have a truck capable of being able to lead a pack up on the outside line or even pick up positions themselves, because it really affects your suck up to the truck in front of you.
Oh, no doubt. They're still trying to figure out kind of, who's good in the draft still and who's, not so good in the draft. It looks like a little player almost caught Brian Delp right there, but yeah, they've caught up, so we'll see who can emerge from that. Might have a guy or two. Now Dewar goes to the top side.
Yeah, so that just made it from a 9-truck pack now to a 14-truck pack. Joshua Personette, Rishabh Kolsla, Brent Jones back here along with Curtis Kenyon. Looks like those drivers are not going to catch up to that lead group. But as we go back up to the front, laps are ticking away. It's going to be 10 laps to go this time around. And look at there, we got a little bit of an outside line forming. Dewar, Jordan, and Player up there.
Yeah, all they need is just a couple guys to go with them, because I don't think they have quite. Oh, and there goes Myhand up there with them to lead it, so that's going to be huge, especially if they get Demantova up there. Now Vic Bloom, and Demantova squeezes it.
Boy, did he ever. I thought for a moment there he was either going to go around off the nose of Myhand or hook Vic Bloom in the process, because that was a very tight squeeze.
Oh my, that was parallel parking tight right there. My goodness.
Look at the run that Vic Bloom got on the top side, though. They weren't really lined up on the bottom, and Vic Bloom trying to become only the 3rd leader out here in race conditions of this event. So far, it's been Jones leading the first 70 or so laps, Leisure leading up to this point, and now Bloom says, I want my turn at the front.
Demantova peeks out there. I wonder if he's trying to cool down his truck, because he's pushing really hard on the back bumper of Vic Bloom.
I almost wonder if he might have gotten a bad bump from behind by my hand, because it almost looked like that car got out of shape.
Yeah, and that would not surprise me at all. These guys we talked about this is go time. They're ready to go, and it's going to be bumps galore and apologize later.
He's going to lead that lap by just a couple of feet. over Leisure. Leisure still committed to the bottom. Demantova, boy, that car is awfully loose. He's moving around there trying to keep himself committed to the back bumper of Bloom. And look at there, Leisure moves up, tries to take a little side draft off the 99. They almost made contact there out of 2.
Oh my, that is both of them trying to hold their ground like two alpha males going at it in the wild that they just about wrecked.
Actually checked everybody up and almost made it 3 wide down the back straightaway. Dallas Myhan had to take his momentum somewhere and started trying to make a lane up the middle. They settle it back out to side by side, and I don't know, the way they're racing, I don't think we've seen our last caution.
Nah, and it may be one of those situations. Big Bloom's going to swing down now, take the lead for sure.
All this racing up here at the front, that has brought some more drivers up here into this lead group. Joshua Personette is back up here. Rishev Kosla is back up here. So too is Curtis Kenyon, Brent Jones. So these guys that are damaging off the pace, because these guys up here are checking up, trying not to wreck each other, that's bringing 5-6 more trucks back into the conversation for possible last-minute top 10s.
Right, and that's guys that, as you mentioned, they're not necessarily going to win, but hey, they could be big factors and just pushing a couple of these lines and really adding some extra momentum.
Well, Vic Bloom says, thank you very much, Demantova, for getting me to the front. He now ducks down to the bottom, leaving Demantova in my hand to try and get that outside line going. So now for Vic Bloom, he's just got to try and hold off both the inside and outside line, kind of junior it now here for these final 7 laps.
Yeah, we'll see if he can play both lanes really well. That's such a tough art to master on a super speedway. You really got to be good at timing it. Oh, Sean Leisure kind of almost got swept into a sucker hole there, but he's good.
Yeah, he drifted up the track there, almost got into the side of Demantova. Fortunately, got it back down there, and it looked like Frickenek gave him enough room to slot back down, and that outside line's coming again. Demantova says, I pushed you to the lead, Vic Bloom. You owe me one. Now I want the lead.
Oh, yeah, I think Demantova in my hand right there are kind of happy that Vic swung down, because now the two teammates could really work hard and support each other trying to get this lead.
The thing I've noticed too is even though Demantova is kind of getting up there to the right rear corner panel, Vic Bloom has been pretty much committed to that double yellow line since getting pushed to the lead. So it kind of looks like some of these guys have realized earlier on how that outside line generates some speed, but then tapers off. They're not willing to give up the bottom to go up there and block the momentum.
Yeah, they're staying pretty calm out of that bottom. You're getting a couple of those guys that we mentioned had some damage, like Kendall Noah Player up there now in the top lane. But yeah, I mean, and Vic Bloom, he is just all over that yellow line because he knows with Sean Leisure behind him, he cannot give an inch or else he might get shoved up out of the way back into that top side.
It's hard to tell there if Leisure's having trouble holding the bottom or not because he seems to want to drift up there and side draft off the 28. You saw right there, Demantova through 3. He came down on the door of the 67 to get some side draft.
James almost caused us some problems there. My goodness, that 0-6.
Almost got up into Dustin Dewar, but they saved it.
And
I don't know. The way they're racing, I can see someone forcing it 3 wide.
Oh, no doubt. I mean, they're getting after it. And I think Leisure, what he's doing is not necessarily, having problems holding the bottom, but he's really trying to create side draft so he can actually get clear. Oh, and then Kendall No Player.
Players involved. There goes around the 0-4 as well. And we've got some other trucks spinning in the grass. This caution coming out with 5 laps to go.
Oh my, let's see how that originated.
And
I think it may just got a bit feisty.
And Delp's involved there in the 8. There's Player in the 94. He was the first truck we saw snap around. I don't necessarily know, but this could set us up, I think, with the number of laps we have left and the number of pacing laps that they run. I think this is spelling out a green-white checkered finish.
I think you're right on that, and it looks like on the wreck that Dewar might have had to check up right there in front of Kendall Noah Player because of how Chris James was running in the 06. That caused Noah to check up, and then he just got a little nudge from the 04 who was, really didn't have any place to go, and that causes that chain reaction.
And you know this as well as anybody. When you get into these closing stages, you can't lift. You got to keep that momentum going.
Oh, no doubt. And, that's why when I'm up there in those closing stages, if I'm not out in front, I want to be the guy on the tail end of the lead lap just because you don't want to be put in a spot where you can't lift and all of a sudden you're running over somebody and you're part of the chaos. So it's a tough situation to be in anytime you're just kind of That's where you don't want to be in these closing laps, just right in the middle of the pack, because that easily happens. We just saw there from players' perspective so many times.
Like Michael Schlegelmich may have gotten a little bit of contact there in the passenger side door. Nothing really major, though, as he did a pretty good job of getting through that.
Yeah.
And you look at some of these guys, that were running towards the tail end with damage, and you've got Brent Jones up here now in 12th, Kenyon up in 11th, Personette in 13th, so they've still got shots getting through that wreck of a top 10.
Right, and we saw they do have enough horsepower to where, as long as they've got the draft, they should be able to be, pushers in that. So they're going to really be kind of the guys that decide which lane's going to take control here down the stretch.
Vic Bloom, with the caution coming out, is going to be the leader. Mantova actually was ahead of Sean Leisure for second when that yellow flag came out. So he's going to restart in the second spot. Leisure would be third, Myhand in fourth. So, with that being said, if you're Vic Bloom and you go to the bottom here for this restart, you're basically giving the top line in the first two rows to teammates that could work together. So do you maybe take the outside line for this restart and break those two teammates up?
I mean, that's a great point because, you don't want to give the teammates a chance to hook up on the restart. The problem is, if you start on the outside, we've seen Leisure and Chris James kind of let them each other down on these restarts. That's not going to happen with Vic Bloom and Sean Leisure. So you have to be really careful here and see what happens. Maybe for Vic, you really try to jump that start on the outside, get a good jump, and just swing down as soon as possible to close that out.
Gotta say here, obviously a lot of new names here, some familiar faces though, but 100 laps here at Daytona, and we're only working our fourth caution. That's actually really a great testament to the way that these guys have raced hard, but they've raced clean.
Yeah, and that's the focus of this series is, trying to prove that, hey, you're a clean racer. You're a guy that, we're going to welcome into the elite series and, having the good attitude and all that. So that is nice to see because that means that, these guys are taking that seriously and really trying to prove that, hey, we can handle ourselves and, we're ready to race in the big time.
The way the green-white checkered works here, these drivers will have 2 laps to settle it out. However, if they wreck before receiving the white flag, that ends the race. They race back to the white flag and the race would end under caution. If they do make it back to the white, though, next flag ends the race. They race it back to the checkers regardless of what happens on that final lap. And I don't know, the way we saw them doing that side drafting side by side, I kind of wonder if it's going to be 2 flags in the flagman's hands when the checkered flag waves. He might have a yellow in his hand there as well.
Yeah, I mean, it could get real crazy. You know what the guys, the Curtis Kenyons, the Brett Jones, the Joshua Personettes are hoping for right here? They're saying, hey, let's get to that white flag, and they're just hoping all chaos just breaks loose in front of them with Vic Bloom and the leaders, and they may be able to sneak a win that way or in top 5 or something crazy. So it's going to get wild. I mean, there's no doubt about that. I imagine we'll probably see some tough blocks and maybe a couple more cars in the air by the end of it.
Those guys back there around 5th, 6th on back, 2 things they got to worry about after that white flag waves. Keep your eyes forward and your foot on the gas because you never know what might happen. So it's going to be Bloom out in front, Mantova second, Leisure there in third, Myhand fourth, then Frickenik in 5th, Chris James in 6th, Dewar 7th, Schlegelmich in 8th, 9th for Kevin Finn, and Chris Jordan in 10th. And the thing that amazes me is, we went into the first half of this race. All it was Chris James. Then we went here in the second half of this race. All we talked about was Sean Leisure. Now we got Vic Bloom up here, and the 2 guys we were talking about are back in 4th and 6th.
Yeah, and now they're going to have to really, work quickly to somehow get themselves in position to win. But as we just talked about with how crazy things might get, maybe they're in the catbird seat to kind of avoid all the chaos that might happen in the top 4 right there.
Don't forget that Cadillac race we had back on Monday.
Yeah.
Kendall Noah Player didn't lead 1 lap all day except the last lap, and he only took the lead out of turn 4 on the last lap. So he led the last 500-600 feet. So that could be the case for somebody here in this race as well.
Hey, that's all that matters in racing, right? I mean, it doesn't matter how many laps you led on the day. As long as you see that checkered flag and you're the first one across it, doesn't matter when you took the lead. It could have been the last foot. You're happy with the win.
Looks like, indeed, what I was speculating. Vic Bloom is going to take the top side, so he breaks up the teammates, Di Mantova and Myhand. And obviously, being the control car, what he'll probably try to do is get down to the bottom after crossing the start-finish line and hope and pray the 28 and 41 cannot find their way nose to tail here before we get to that checkered flag.
Yeah, that's going to be the tough part, is timing the jump right to where you can swing down in front of Di Mantova, but not give him enough space to then swing up and get hooked up with Myhand in the top lane, because that could be a quick cross right there after you get past the start-finish line.
Which flag will end the race? Will they make it back to the white, or will they have this race end under yellow before the white even flies? Green flag in the air. Vic Bloom gets a good jump. Is he going to cross down to the bottom of the racetrack? I think he's kind of trying to figure out what those two behind him are going to do.
Yeah, he doesn't know what to do. He's going to stick his guns on the top side for a second.
One might be clear on the 28. He's going to try and tuck down. He just barely does tuck down in front of Di Mantova. Almost got in the back of Vic Bloom, and here comes the 84 on the outside.
Yeah, we know he's got no problem working that top side. He's going to have Chris James running up there behind him, and they may be able to make some hay here.
Sean Leisure up there with him as well, so if those three who have been really fast all night can get together, can they make that outside line work? Meanwhile, Dustin Dewar there on the inside line, 4th place. He's been working with the 41 and the 28 all night long, so if those three step out, Vic Bloom may be a sitting duck. Looks like they're going to make it back to the white.
They will, and now frickin' it, Leisure and Chris James got to get hooked up quick because they've only got 4 more corners to get up there.
And Tova, he almost got wrecked there off the nose of his, or I'm sorry, Myhand off the nose of Di Mantova. Here comes that outside line. Frickenek with a big run. Bloom goes to block. They're going to be 3 wide now as up the middle comes the 67.
Loyalty out the window. Leisure leaves Frickenet out to dry, and now 3 wide down the backstretch. This is going to be crazy.
That box is in, the 41, and around goes the 82. Frickenek is around in the grass, but we're still racing back to the checkers. It looks like it's going to be Vic Bloom on the bottom. Top side, it's going to be the 67 of Leisure. Who's going to lead coming back to the checkers?
I don't think they've got enough to run on the outside. I think Vic Bloom might have this one in the bag. Oh, and there they go.
We're still wrecking as Bloom takes the checkers. Myhand in second. And it's anybody's guess of who crossed in third, because they all were wrecking from about 3rd place on back. But Vic Bloom, you go back to the charge he made on the outside. He got clear for the lead. He was the control car on the restart. And Vic Bloom, you mentioned he's kind of the off-track admin for a lot of the races. Well, puts on the helmet, gets behind the wheel, picks up a checker flag.
Yeah, just put himself in the right spot, and as you mentioned, just made the right decisions down the stretch right there. It worked out for him. Oh my, what a race. And there was just chaos on that front stretch as they were crossing the line. We're still figuring out who finished where here in the top 10. There was cars everywhere.
Sean Leisure was 3rd, Dustin Dewar 4th, and how about this? Dylan Hickey, who was a lap down near the halfway point of this race, got back in the lead lap with a lucky dog. He finished top 5.
I mean, hey, there you go. We talked about those guys in the back that were kind of off pace. They were just hoping that something like that would happen in the end, and there you go. They slip a top 5. Joseph Costello at 6. Michael Schlegel Milch, excuse me, tongue twister, out in 7th, and Personette in 8th. Chris Kenyon in 9th. Britt Jones in 10th. All damaged trucks, and they get a top 10.
My goodness, wow. I mean, we kind of got the feeling, with it being a green-white checkered and what we had seen, especially in that last green flag run just before the 4th caution, that we were going to see some aggressive racing, and we definitely did. We'll take a look here. We gave you basically your top 10 in the finishing results here, and you look back at some of these guys. We talked about Hickey, but Kenyon was a lap down earlier. Brent Jones was a lap down earlier. The both of them were able to salvage top 10 finishes. That's just incredible, and that's why you'd never take the car behind the wall unless you know absolutely certain that the thing is absolutely done, because you never know. You could end up coming away with a top 10 finish. And 2 of the guys that we talked about early on, Sean Leisure finishing in 3rd, but Chris James dominated in the first half, but brings it home in the 11th position.
Yeah, unfortunate break for him. You know, we talked about the alliances there at the end of Leisure and James were going to kind of work together. They hung Frickendick out to dry. He results, off in the back straight, and then they couldn't stay hooked up enough off turn 4 to really make the run, and more chaos ensued.
There you see D Mantova finishing in 12th. He was, I believe, around second or third when they took the white flag. Kevin Finn brings it home 13th. Chris Jordan 14th. Kendall Noah Player, after bringing out the caution that set us up for that green-white checkered, still rallied back for 15th. Kosla, Delp, Thompson, Frickenik, and Cogswell. That is your top 20. And of course, Frickenik was the one that spun on the back straightaway on the final lap. Tough break there for him, as he was pretty much up inside the top 5 for the entirety of this race.
Yeah, had a really good run right there. Obviously, I thought for the most part kept everything pretty clean, and it's going to be a disappointing result, but he's going to have a chance to really bounce back and, continue to try to show that muscle next week.
You can see here all the rest of the drivers that either finished out of the race due to the 4 cautions we had. I think some of them was also due to maybe connection issues, but 38 cars listed here in the running order. I believe 36 of them actually started this race. We are now going to get a word with our top 3 finishers, and we are going to kick things off with the 3rd place finisher, that being the 67 of Sean Leisure. It's Tyler and Seth up here in the Flatout Racing Network studios. You got us?
Yes, sir.
Well, let's first begin with the first half of that race. Seemed like you and the 06 had something pretty well worked out working together there.
Yeah, it really did. Me and him just sort of seemed like a mutual alliance since the beginning of the race. I never really went high. I wanted to continue to push him, make it easy, single file, so he can have a nice, clean, easy race, which it worked. It worked out in our favor, especially whenever we pitted. It was me, Marcus, and 06. We all pitted at once. We became a 3-car train, and we were actually pulling on the main pack behind him.
And let's talk about. Yes, that's what I was going to point out. That caution coming out there, and the 99 had gotten around you guys, getting that outside line working. So, with now no longer being lined up first and second, did you and Chris James have any plan going on, or was there somebody else that you were kind of looking at to maybe try and charge to the front with?
Well, me and James, we also had a little deal with Marcus there. Us 3 were just trying to stay single file, which of course then the end of the race happened. We were all racing for position, but at the time we were planning to run, 1-2 and try to hold him off, but it just didn't work out that way. We weren't able to get the right restart position because I thought he was going to be behind me, but he started on the outside.
Tyler's got any questions for you?
Hey, that performance right there, do you think that's going to be indicative of kind of your strength going forward through these next series of tracks? You're going to be able to kind of show that same muscle you showed tonight?
I believe I can with the right practice, and it's always one of those things that I have certain tracks I'm good at, and I believe I'm pretty strong at the next 2, but Bristol is going to be interesting. I could say that one, especially being it's the season finale. There's going to be a lot of stuff going on. I think it's going to put on a good show.
Yeah, and the short tracks right there, is that probably your weak point, you feel like? And, as you mentioned, is that what you're going to focus on over these next few weeks?
Oh, I think I'm good at short track. It's just Bristol. It just bites my ass.
Okay, I gotcha.
But I really hope to continue like this relationship that I had with the 06 and, of course, Marcus in the 84. I feel like us 3, we can definitely get something done, and hopefully all of us make it to Cup.
Well, definitely a great performance out of you tonight. I don't think your car fell out of the top 5 all night long, which is not easy to do at a super speedway, especially when you've got as big a field as we had tonight and 100 laps. But great job by you, Sean. We're going to turn the microphone over to you and let's do some shout-outs here.
Yeah, I wasn't wearing the paint scheme tonight, but I want to give a shout out to Proximity Racing, Trace for photography, Splash and Go, Rex for engineering, all those guys back in the esports team. They're an amazing team. I love them all.
All right, well, congratulations on your 3rd place run here tonight. Look forward to seeing what you're able to do at the 1.5 Mile next week at Texas.
Yes, sir. Home track.
All right, let's bring in the 2nd place finisher, Dallas Myhand. Dallas, it's Tyler and Seth up here in the Flatout Racing Network studios. You got us?
Oh, yes, I do.
like you had a strategy there all race long. You, along with the 28 as well as the 32, seemed like all three of you were kind of all together in the same vicinity all race long. Was that basically the strategy? Three of you stick together and try working your way to the front at the end?
I know the original strategy was me and the 28. Then we picked up the 4 for a little while before this first pit stop, so then we got shuffled out because of that caution. But I know the plan. I think the plan was as long as me and my teammate, the 28, stayed clean, we had to stay together to end this race.
We saw Vic Bloom make that decision to start on the outside line, break you two up there for that final restart. So what kind of plan were you guys formulating to try and get yourself lined up there to be able to make a run on the final 2 laps?
Well, that was actually all planned already in advance. Because we knew if we stay on the outside, me and the 28, we had to wait for the leader to go. But we know, me and the 99 were working together as the 28 was. And me and the 99 went a little early, so we had to get in front of the 28, so we got all on the inside line.
Talk about coming off turn 4 there. I mean, you had a shot at possibly taking the win away from Vic Bloom in the 99, but then you look back in your rearview mirror, all your drafting help's gone.
Yes, it was. I'm like it was crazy, but then again, I'm happy about where I finished because I'm a Cup Series driver, so any chance I get to have a race car, I'll take any chance I get.
Tyler's got any questions for you here?
Dallas, we've kind of seen you in spurts in a league competition. What is kind of your goals going forward with this truck series, and eventually as we get into the next seasons here?
My goal is just get better and better each week. I know I need to learn more, improve better. I mean, I finished 5th place last year in the Cup Series points, but I know I got. I mean, I have a lot of improvement to do for myself, and me being here will help.
There you go, Seth.
All right. Well, after a 2nd place run here tonight at Daytona, we're going to turn the microphone over to you and let you do some shout-outs here, Dallas.
I like to thank my guys back at Evo Sinsport for allowing me to drive the race cars, and all of my sponsors on the car for making this happen to me on this track. And thank you guys for broadcasting the series, and thanks Chad for putting up this Truck Series League for the off season for the Cup Series. And thank you guys again. It was fun.
No problem. Glad to do it, and look forward to see if you can carry this momentum into next week's race, that 1.5 miles at Texas.
Yep. So see you guys next week.
Last but not least, let's bring in our race winner, Vic Bloom. It's Tyler and Seth up in the Flatout Racing Network studios. You got us?
Yes, sir.
Well, Tyler alluded to this back, the midway point of the race of, normally you're the off-track admin, but boy, you were the racer tonight. Talk about those final couple of laps.
Yeah, I actually, that race is crazy. I usually am off-track official, and Tyler's usually on the racetrack. So in a way, we kind of flipped positions tonight, except he did commentary, obviously. So in a way, we kind of flipped positions, which is funny. But yeah, I had a great time out there. Those final few laps were pretty crazy, but I knew that the 28 and 41 were going to work with me all along. We were in Discord together, so.
We saw earlier on a couple of guys try and make that outside line work, and it just kind of seemed like they couldn't stay lined up long enough to be able to get the momentum to get that outside run. But then you jumped up there and led that outside line up to the front and eventually cleared the 67 for the lead. What was the difference, do you think, between the group that you had behind you at that time as opposed to the other groups that were trying to make the move in the first half of the race?
I was all trust. Dallas and Shane, I trusted them entirely with my race. If they were going to, bump me sideways at the wrong place, it was going to be what it was, but I trusted them not to, and it turned out very well, very, very well. We were able to make that outside line work because of it. If you don't trust the people behind you, you can't make that outside line work.
I hear you. I mean, we saw the outside line try and work there in the closing stages as well. You had the 67, the 06, the 82. They were all lined up there. So did you have any kind of a game plan formulated of blocking that run on the outside if they were able to get to you?
Nope. The guys behind me, I told them just in the final lap and a half, don't lift. If you turn me, that's fine. Just keep going. I'll turn the opposite direction of you guys. Just keep going. One of us was going to win. I was willing to risk losing for one of them to win. So
that adheres to the advice I gave. Just keep your eyes forward and your foot on the throttle. Tyler, you got anything?
Yeah, Vic. So, we talked about how, usually you're an off-track official for Elite. What, do you have to shake off the rust coming into tonight, or do you, stay pretty regular in terms of trying to get some races in and stay loose on the pedals?
Well, actually, it's a funny thing that you bring that up. This is the first oval race I've done this year. So the whole month of January, I didn't do any oval racing on iRacing. So that hour of practice before really, really helped. I did like 20 laps in that, but I got some drafting practice in it with some great guys, and it was really helpful.
Well, and since you hadn't done a race in that long on oval, was it kind of like riding a bike, you never forgot, or was there some things you kind of had to adapt to in that hour of practice that maybe, wasn't there before?
I had to get used to the way that the car steered a little bit because I was used to how the Pro 2 truck, because that's what I've been driving lately.
Okay.
How the Pro 2 light truck drives, and I had to get really used to this, and so that little bit of practice really helped.
10 for all that, man. Hey, good win, good drive out there tonight.
Thank you.
Absolutely. We're going to turn the microphone over and let's do some shout outs here after your victory tonight at Daytona.
Yeah. Okay. So I just got to thank. I got to make sure to thank all the right people. I got to thank Chad for putting on this league. It's fantastic. Got to thank the sponsors. Got to thank Speed 51 for being involved in the league. Got to thank WWT Raceway, Wentz Auto Body, Pinecone Cabins, Days Gone By Apparel, Home Place Beer. I'm sure I'm missing some, but I got to thank all those people that support the league. And I also got to thank you guys for coming on board and partnering with Elite. That's fantastic. It's great. We all love you guys. We all go back and watch broadcasts after the race. And also, as far as tonight goes, I really, really got to thank Chris Jordan for helping in the Discord, Dallas, My Hand, and Shane DiMantova from Evo Sim Sport. If it wasn't for them, this whole win wouldn't have been possible.
All right. Well, congratulations, Vic, on your win tonight. Hopefully we can see you carry that momentum into Texas next week, but go enjoy your victory.
Thank you.
All right. So, I was listening to what Vic was saying there with the fact that he went out there, had to kind of get used to driving an oval and everything again. I can't tell you the number of times I've raced in leagues where, they'll wreck it up in practice at Talladega or Daytona, and we're like, can you take this seriously? Why? Why do we have to practice for a super speedway? I'm going to use Vic Bloom as an example to those guys because he proved right there you do need to practice to be able to get up there and win at a super speedway. But that's going to do it for our coverage here this evening. I mean, I think we can safely say that this race kind of matched up to everything we expected. But to be honest, I was expecting to maybe see a little bit more a difference of experience and inexperience, and maybe see a little bit more wrecks than we did. And really impressive on how everybody was able to really mesh together. We only had, if we don't count the yellow coming out there on the final lap, we only really had 4 official cautions. And to be honest, they weren't really wrecks with drivers making, foolish mistakes. It was just basically racing incidents with maybe a bump in the wrong place or something like that.
Yeah, and we mentioned at the top of the broadcast how there's varying levels of experience in terms of guys on sim, guys not being on sim. And as you mentioned, I mean, just really impressive stuff tonight. I think everybody took coming into this series, their prep very seriously and just made sure that they felt comfortable with what they were doing, and we saw that tonight.
We obviously, brought up the fact that being a super speedway, it pretty much puts everybody on a level playing field. These guys have to shift gears for Texas next week, and I think that that's going to maybe separate out some of the guys we saw up at the front here tonight, maybe see them more mid-pack next week. It's really going to kind of maybe separate out those guys that are really good, have the mile and a half as their bread and butter.
Yeah, not only that, I think something that's going to be interesting to watch, in the trucks, we talk about the new tire model a bit, and kind of how that's affected Xfinity Cup, and obviously you being a boost saw that kind of over the course of the last end of the tail end of the playoffs there for both those series. But I'm really intrigued to see how it's going to affect these trucks at a place like Texas, where you might get a couple long runs and you really have to maybe take care of your tires.
Absolutely, no doubt about that. Well, Tyler, I know we did like a practice broadcast before we had tonight's, but tonight was the official one. I want to thank you for joining me here this evening. It was great to be able to get the driver insight of somebody that's raced in this league and knows these kind of different fundamentals of how these cars work, the driver's mentality out there. It really helps as far as getting that kind of side of the story in the broadcast booth.
Hey, and I can't thank y'all enough for, letting me come in here and do this and be part of what is already a phenomenal broadcast team there. Obviously, Matthew, shout him out as well for, putting all this together and doing a great job with that. And all the connections issues with me, that will be fixed going forward. I promise, no more cutouts.
It just seemed like a whole bunch of connection issues tonight. First, the broadcast thing the software didn't want to work. Then, the server has connection issues. Then you have connection issues. I don't know if I didn't have the updated Frontier internet, I probably would have joined you as well. But hopefully everybody enjoyed tonight's broadcast here from Daytona. We will be airing live next Wednesday night from Texas Motor Speedway, continuing on this series. But for Tyler, I'm Seth Cole. We'll see you guys next week as we continue on this truck series on Elite Racing League on the Flatout Racing Network.